This is the Late Late Lunch Show with Rod Maxwell.
Supported by
Childbird Learning in Nature's Playground.
It's Rod Maxwell on Radio Voci on the Late Late Lunch Show, and today I'm delighted to be speaking with a gentleman who is a musical director of a choir that's based right here in the Altrincham area. The choir is called the Voci, and it's an award-winning choir, and I'm speaking to the musical director. Is that right, Ben? Are you the musical director of Voci?
That's right, yes.
So my guest today is Ben Nicol. And Ben, let's just talk about the choir first of all. You just tell me the background to Voci and what is your sort of your approach to music, if you like.
Yeah, well, yeah. First of all, thanks so much for having me on.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so Voci is a women's choir, so what I would call an upper voices choir. And yeah, I think the key thing is it's a very collaborative and inclusive choir that was set up around 20 years ago by their then musical director Lorraine, and she conducted them for years and years, and only recently they've had different musical directors, which is part of the way that I got the job. But yeah, the kind of the big thing about Voci is it's a women's choir, and we're really focused on the upper voices repertoire, which there's a huge amount of really interesting repertoire written for kind of boys chorus originally, so lots of kind of older music written for that, and then lots of contemporary newer music written for just specifically upper voices choir, which is fantastic.
Well, I've got so many questions I want to ask you because I sing in choirs. I've sung since I was a young person, but actually there's so many things I want to ask you about an all-female, all-women's choir, because it'd probably be a different structure and a different approach to how you arrange and how you do it. And I also want to find out about your role as a musical director. So today, my guest is Ben Nicol, and he is the musical director at the Voci Choir. It's based here in South Manchester, and we'll be talking to him more about the choir in a couple of minutes now.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
You listen to Radio Voci. It's Rod Maxwell on the Late Late Lunch Show. Today we're talking about choral music, we're talking about choirs, and we're talking about the Voci Choir, which is based right here in South Manchester. I'm speaking with the musical director Ben Nicol. Now, Ben, how long have you been with the Voci for?
It's actually quite a recent job that I've got. So I've only started with them in January. So really, this is the first term working with Voci, and it's been really exciting to get a few things off the ground and really get stuck in.
Now, tell me, because I'm used to choirs, and there's different approaches to it. You have approaches where you have sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses. Sometimes in choral choirs, you might have the choristers as well. And sometimes the choir I sing in, we call them tops, middles, and bottoms. Yeah. And each section is a mix. Although, funny enough, the middles, which are more like altos, are all women actually, but the bottoms and the tops are mixed. With an all-female choir, what's the approach that you traditionally take or you take with Voci?
Yeah, so mostly in terms of, first of all, kind of looking for music, we mostly as a choir would fall into the traditional sopranos and altos kind of category. You actually often find, people might be surprised to know that there are lots of women that sing very much in the kind of tenor range. They can sing that slightly lower range as well. So actually, even though we don't tend to have any what we call lower voices, we can sing quite a big range of music because we can cover a lot of the basses, there, which is great. But mostly, focusing on what we'd call kind of upper voices music. So usually soprano and alto music first of all, and adding in other bits if we need to.
And in that way, then, do you find that music can be specifically arranged for that style of choir, or do you have to self-arrange, if you like?
Yeah, a bit of both. I would definitely say there is a lot of music that's pre-arranged or originally written for that, especially in the last kind of 30, 40 years. I mean, contemporary choral music's really taken off, but with upper voices as well. So some composers that we're seeing at the moment, kind of Toby Young, Eleanor Daly, Bob Chilcott, these are all composers that are live and writing music right now. And upper voices music is a huge, there's a lot of demand for it, and there's slightly less of it out there compared to your traditional SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. music. So that's really great. There's much more of it being written.
And in terms of the style of music, the genre that Vocci's known for, is there a particular style, or do you do it based on the seasons and take different themes? What would you define Vocci's style to be?
Well, that's a very tricky one, because I think what's really nice about Voci is that they love doing a really big range of music, a big variety. So, for instance, we've got a concert coming up, and we're doing kind of some Mendelssohn and things like that, which is kind of slightly older, slightly more serious. But then we're doing you'll hear some elbow, some contemporary composers, kind of Sarah Quartel writing right now. It's a really big range of stuff, and it's really driven by the choir and what they enjoy singing. So I often kind of touch base with them and say, kind of, what do you want to do a bit more of? Or if they have a particular song they're like, I've always wanted to sing this, I'm always up for kind of trying to arrange it or find a version that we can make work.
This is the Late Late Lunch Show with Rod Maxwell on Radio Alti.
It's Rod Maxwell on Radio Alti. Today I'm speaking to Ben Nicol, who is the musical director at local choir at Voci. And as you heard him say, he's taken on the role since January. Now, Ben, would I be right in saying that it's a really good time for choirs? It seems that people have come back to singing, come back to mass singing, choral singing, etc. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great time to be singing it in any way, really. I think there's a couple things at play. I think obviously the big one, the elephant in the room, would be the pandemic, which hopefully we are moving away from now. But I think us as conductors, whether it was in choral music or orchestral music, that was quite tough. Obviously, kind of Zoom rehearsals, trying to keep these groups going and keep the energy as high as possible. That was really tough for, obviously, to kind of direct, but really for the people in the choir, it's such a social activity, and you get so much out of singing. It's so good for you, and you get such a buzz from it that it was such a shame not to have that for so long. But I think people have seen that, and so we've had this rush kind of post-COVID that people are really keen to get into choirs, get singing, and get seeing people and interacting.
And I think we've seen on TV a lot of programs where people find their voice. And I think what it's done is take the stuffiness out of, if you like, formal music settings. Do you think that's helped?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are still things like kind of your church choir and things that have been around for many, many years. But this new kind of format of what I would describe as singing with your own voice. In the past, people kind of there was a very certain way that maybe people thought you should sing and a particular sound that you should make. And actually now lots of people are big fans of this. Yeah, kind of just singing with, bringing your voice and what you've got, not trying to kind of change it too much, as long as what you're doing is kind of healthy and you're having fun and you're making a sound that you enjoy. That's all that matters, really.
We're talking to Ben Nicol. He is the musical director at local choir Voci, and we'll take a break and be back with him in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
So Ben, one of the things I find that a musical director needs to be able to do is you're taking people through quite a structured process of learning a piece of music, but you've got to do it in a way that you don't overawe them if they're not professional singers. You don't make them too nervous about how difficult it might be, and you've got to be, I think, enthusiastic even when it's not going particularly well. Do you find, that draws on a lot of, as a musical director, as the leader of the choir, you've got to have a lot of different skills and experience as to how to take somebody from not knowing something to the point where you could actually do it live.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that first few weeks when you're kind of looking at new music is always quite interesting to kind of, how do you kind of start to get things off the ground? And I think the key thing, as you kind of touched on, was not overloading people. So it's bite-sized chunks. So I'm quite a big fan of carefully not over planning rehearsals, but kind of making sure that we're not working on one piece for a kind of hour. You don't want to be bashing notes, as we call it, for one piece for hours and hours, and you feel like you kind of get to the end of rehearsal, you've not really made, even though you might have made progress, it doesn't always feel like that. It's good to kind of do a little bit of something. Okay, I've got a few ideas there, and something you do see is really over the week. We rehearse once a week with Voci, and so you've looked at some notes and things, and people might think, "Oh, I haven't quite got that," but then they've gone away and they've kind of thought about it during the week, and they're, "Oh, right, I've cracked that bit, right? Okay, I'm ready to look at the next bit," and things like that. The other thing to be aware of is that depends on people's kind of what we call their reading. So like we got in Voci, we've got some very strong sight readers, and they're able to kind of look at a piece and pretty much sing it, basically note for note kind of straight away. But then we've also got some people who aren't so strong music readers and very much would learn, their kind of method is more to learn by ear. So it's being aware as a singer what your strengths are and kind of playing to those really, and the best way of learning.
And that's what I find is really powerful about a choir, is that you can be somebody who's not particularly strong at singing or sight reading. You might even be that confident, but when you get into your group, whether it be your section or whatever, you get taken along with that, and you can grow in your confidence, and you can find your own voice over time. There's something very, natural and powerful about a choir in that way.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And with that kind of being taken along idea, you really find that lots of people, even if you have very little music experience, you kind of look at the dots and you can kind of say, well, if it goes up, it's probably going to sound a bit higher, and if it goes down, it's probably going to sound a bit lower. And actually, if one person near you knows the exact note, because they're a really good reader, you can think, oh, I was expecting it to jump down. Okay, that's how big the jump is. Okay, I'm locked in. I can pretty much read this with a little bit of help from the people around me.
And as a musical director, I've always wondered this, because you have the prime spot in terms of listening, right? Are you, when you're, whether it be in rehearsals or in a live concert, are you able to pick out individual voices even within a section, and that voice and that singer? Do you get tuned into that at all?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think we'll touch on the rehearsal versus performance later, because that's something quite interesting in that. But yeah, when you're up there and listening, it really depends on the group and particularly how big it is. So Voci is about 40 strong. So that we generally break that into around 3 sections. So you're looking at, well, maybe what's that, about 13 people, let's say, roughly in each. And the idea is in each section, something we're really trying to work on is what we call blend. So trying to make sure that together we're all hopefully singing the same note at the same time. That's great. But within that, we're all trying to kind of make the same kind of what we might call like the color of the sound, so that it all really sounds like kind of one unified like group together, rather than 13 people trying to sing the same note and all slightly differently. So in that way, if we're getting our job really right, hopefully I can't pick out one voice within a group of 13. But then the other side of that is when we're kind of learning music, will be some slightly stronger singers, some less strong singers in a group. And that's something that I've really enjoyed over the last few months, is getting to know everybody as people, but getting to know their voices as well. And I'm starting to kind of pick up, oh yeah, I know that person there. I can kind of hear they're usually quite good, got a good low range, so they're going to be quite good at digging that bit out and helping their section there. Some things like that is good to kind of become aware of.
It does strike me that as the musical director, you're more than a musician, aren't you? Because you're a leader. You've got to bring enthusiasm, morale, excitement. You've got to pick up the whole sort of the feeling of the choir in terms. You must be able to tell when they're feeling nervous or you're feeling confident about a piece.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we always say as conductors or musical directors that for a professional singer, they get nervous and perform in the concert. Well, our getting nervous and performing is rehearsal. That's really most of our job is getting up in front of 40 people and having to kind of put on, like you say, the energy and the kind of, right, we're gonna do this and it's all gonna work out. So yeah, for us, I think it can be very tiring, even a kind of a 2-hour rehearsal. You've really got on a Monday evening when everyone's just had their first day at work, and you want to be there, but sometimes you kind of turn up and you're a little bit tired. Yes, from the start, it's very important to kind of straight away. We always start with a warm up, high energy, get everyone on their feet, and just kind of get that energy going get rid of the rest of the day and start afresh. I think that's really important.
Today on the show, we're speaking to the musical director at Voci. His name is Ben Nicol. We'll be talking to him a little bit more about his role and his background as well in a couple of minutes' time.
This is the Late Late Lunch Show with Rod Maxwell on Radio Alti.
It's Rod Maxwell on Radio Alti, and today I'm delighted to be talking about music, talking about choirs. And I've got to say, we are really blessed in Manchester, South Manchester, with so many choirs. And I think Ben, we were talking about it earlier. The great thing about it is you can find your own voice, and your own voice might work absolutely brilliantly in a choir, even though you may not want to sing on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you see it across all of music, actually. The difference between being a soloist and being in a group as a choir or an orchestra. Like if you're a singer in a 40-strong choir and you put a microphone right next to you, I mean, you might think it sounds quite odd and quite peculiar, but whatever you do, that it works in the bigger group. So and that's the sound that we're aiming for. Yeah, very much like different to kind of our personal sound.
So you are the musical director and
Yes.
You are the choir lead as such. What does that role mean? I mean, what's the sort of key activities and key responsibilities of your role?
Yeah, well, I suppose lots of people think just about kind of the rehearsals and the concert, and that would be the main job, and that's very important. But there's lots of other things kind of even before we get to the first rehearsal. So choosing the music we're going to sing, obviously very important. Got to do it in advance so we can get it all ordered in if it's new or whatever the situation is. And just kind of planning a bit of an overall vision for the choir. So for example, with Voci, we've got a kind of a concert coming up before summer. We're singing in a festival, Sale Festival, a month later. But then I'm really excited about next term. We've got a workshop coming up with Susie Van Gogh, who's a fantastic singing practitioner and soprano. We're looking at doing some competitions, hopefully, and I know Voci have done competitions before I got the job as well. And just really looking at trying to kind of expand our horizons, try lots of things. And that's what's great about Voci, is they're so keen to try everything and have a go.
And I guess, what you do need to be doing is blending. There's some consistency in what you're doing from season to season, but you've got to be doing some new things to keep people engaged and excited.
Absolutely. I think it's always a balance, isn't it? Because I think people in a choir really love the music that they've done. They think, and we know that really well. We sang that really well, and they really, what you're familiar with, you often really like. But I think what's really important is to make sure we're pushing boundaries, getting enough new music in, whether that be new composers, new styles of music. Trying something completely different that you never thought you could kind of sing in a choir, and it works really well. Oh, great! I've discovered something new. That's, I think, super important.
No, I often feel that somebody who is a musical director, a leader of a choir, they have a unique set of skills, and one of the skills, and we touched upon it a little bit earlier, is their ability to be confident even when they're least confident about what's going on, because their enthusiasm, whether it be in a live situation, portrays to the choir, and the choir looks to that person to think, are we okay? Now, is that something that came naturally to you, or as you were developing your skill in music and you were training, you found that, or have you always had that, if you like?
Yeah, I think in terms of when I was a lot younger and kind of doing musical things, I think a few of the things that I completely by accident did kind of pushed me towards that conducting role. Like one thing that springs to mind is I'm a trombonist as well as a singer. And I used to play when I was a teenager in a kind of jazz funk kind of fusion band. We did some covers, we did some kind of more original stuff. But we kind of very much went to kind of weddings and functions and things like this. And I kind of led the band, I led the rehearsals, and I talked usually to kind of whoever would be listening, tell them about the music and us and things like that. And I think that's where that kind of high energy kind of little performance, like being up in front of people, kind of maybe started.
Yeah.
And it kind of snowballed a little bit from there.
Yeah, I do think that being slightly extroverted as a musical director, even though you've got your back to the audience, even your facial mood can portray back to the choir confidence or fear. I mean,
absolutely.
And they do look to you, don't they? They look for that reassurance, especially if it's a new piece and you're doing it for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of the confidence and this, it could be like maybe we don't think we know it very well, or it could be, do you know what, this is a very tricky, maybe quite a high moment for the sopranos and they're feeling a bit nervous. And as singers, when we feel nervous, we want to kind of get smaller and get more tense. And that's exactly the opposite of what we want to be doing when we want to sing high, or we want to kind of make a nice relaxed and kind of bright sound. So yeah, I think especially with singers, I think it's just making sure it's just so like everything that I do needs to be relaxed, because I suppose this is something about conducting as well, is we as people have something called kind of mirror neurons, which is like, so when you sit in a choir, you're looking at conductor, you're not thinking, oh, they've done it like, they've kind of done that quite jumpy, so I'm going to sing jumpy. No one's thinking that. People are just thinking it should be a natural response. So if I'm really nice and relaxed, hopefully it'll help them to be as relaxed as they can be when it comes to performance.
And something I've always wanted to ask and actually discuss is that when you're presenting a new piece to the choir, do you in your head have some sort of, I don't know, methodology that sort of says, right, the first couple of weeks we're going to just nail it technically, we're going to get the notes right, but then you move to a phase where you're emotionally getting it, that you're confident about the notes, but what you're trying to get out is the drama, the feeling, the emotion of the piece? Is that something that you consciously go through a process of, and you know when they're right for that, or does that come naturally, if you like?
So interesting with this, I would say this is maybe where I differ a bit from what some musical directors might do, is I'm a really big fan of trying to get the feeling and the emotion in from the start. So even though you're learning the notes, you might learn a particular phrase, a little chunk of music. Straight away, we're kind of like, okay, this is how the notes sound. And even from the first time they sing it, I'm asking them to say, okay, what in the text maybe is important? What are the words? What is the most important word? Maybe we're going to go towards that in the way we're going to sing it. Because I think sometimes if you kind of learn the notes and then you think, right, I'm going to put the kind of the phrasing, the passion, the drama, whatever you want into it, you learn it and then you have to almost relearn it again. And I think, why not kind of shorten that process and from the start get the emotion into it.
And linked to that, and before we go for another break, I've got to ask you this question, because a lot of people can work a lot on phraseology and word, how would you expression, the way that you say things. You sing a word, and there are words that you sing in a totally different way to that which you would speak, and you sometimes are breaking away from your natural dialect, if you like.
Yes.
Is that something that it's quite classical and that choirs are still doing, or do you think people have moved away from that in a desire to be more natural, if you like?
Yeah, I think there's two things there. I think the one thing why maybe traditionally we often feel we're kind of singing, and lots of people would describe, especially choral singing, as singing in a very posh way. So all your vowels are very kind of all very well to do, very like, and that might be very different to your speaking voice. And I think so. Maybe one reason why we do that is so that we all sing the same vowels, and that goes back to that thing we talk about blending. So we all sing the same, like all these sounds. It's easier to match the sound in the section. But then, yes, I would say something I'm a big fan of, and lots of people are moving towards, is trying to sing more closely to your speaking voice. And that's what we talk about, bringing your own sound, is not trying to kind of bring on this very opera, kind of very different voice if it's not natural to you. And it really depends on the type of piece you're singing. But for a lot of these more recent kind of contemporary pieces, you want to be singing the text that makes sense. You don't want to be the audience to sit there trying to figure out what it is you're saying. Yeah,
it's interesting because I sang in a cathedral choir from about the age of 8. And pronunciation and expression was something that you worked a lot on. And we used to also go on Royal Church Music of RNCA, whatever it was called, Royal Church College of Church Music, whatever. We used to go on courses, know, and you would, I do find that I talk in one way, I sing in a slightly different way, and you sort of build that, but it's not natural for everybody. It's just something that you learn, really.
Yes, and it's the kind of thing, it depends on the choir. If you've got enough people that did learn that way, they'll tend to pull people in that direction, and people are very good at just naturally using their ears and trying to match up with everyone around them, which I suppose at the end of the day, if we're all trying to do the same thing, that's great, whichever way we go.
I'm going to come back and talk to you about the concerts as well, because I find that choirs need concerts. You need that. You need the drama of performing to give you a focus, and I want to also talk about some of the concerts that the Voci coming up. So today, I'm delighted to be speaking with Ben Nicol. He is the musical director at a local choir, the Voci, and we'll come back and talk to him a little bit more about the choir and a little bit more about the concerts that they've got coming up in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
You know, Ben, I feel like I could do just an hour talking about singing and choirs, because there is something about a choir. It's quite a unique thing. I find myself sometimes being quite emotional singing a piece. And you sort of like, you can be almost tearing up, because the power of being amongst other people and the voices, it's quite unique.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's exactly what we want. I think it has so many benefits for you in terms of kind of making you think about what you're singing about, the message you're trying to send. But yeah, also just that feel where kind of your hairs stand on end. You're kind of with all those people in a big chord, kind of, and it's amazing.
It is.
There's nothing quite like it.
And I think then for anybody, I mean, I find that choirs have a mystical almost benefit to them. You can be somebody who, might be a little bit lost in your life, but the choir gives you purpose. It gives you a feeling of companionship. It gives you a feeling of belonging. You might be somebody who wanted to be creative all your life, but you've never felt the confidence to do. You get the power of being creative amongst other people. That's something. And you might be somebody who's new to an area, and it's a great way to meet people and socialize. They have so many benefits. I guess that's some of the reason why, and a bit of Gareth Malone as well, why they've become so popular.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm sure there's lots of other examples outside of music, but I think for me, yeah, choirs in music. I've never been to a choir where the atmosphere is nothing but welcoming. It's always just such a nice place to be, and from day one, you're kind of there, and you feel like it's the place you should be, and everyone's happy to have you there. And I think just that from the start is absolutely what we should be doing. And because I think especially with lots of people work from home these days, and that we get less maybe of that social interaction. And so just kind of, and people are craving these opportunities to kind of go sing in a choir, just go see people. I mean, we try and we do 2-hour rehearsals with Voci, and we try and have a short kind of 5-10 minute break. And it's always, everyone's just like chatting and wants to carry on chatting all night, because everyone's just so keen to kind of hang out and catch up.
Yeah, it's a great way to get to know people in the area, and you find people from such a wide background of professions, jobs, etc. And when you're in a choir together, you're just in the choir. It doesn't really matter what your job is, you're just in the choir.
Yes, I remember one of the first musical director jobs I had. I conducted the first few rehearsals, and it was quite a big group, so it took me a while to get to know everyone. And I almost was a bit kind of taken aback when I found out I was conducting kind of doctors, eye surgeons, and all that. And I thought, but when we're all there in the rehearsal, we're just there and all lovers of music, and we want to sing, and that's really great.
But I think this also comes back to the role of the musical director. I have been in choirs where the lead, the musical director, the choir master, may be very technically great, but they lack a certain, presence, a certain atmosphere about themselves where they just don't galvanize you in the same way. And I think that there is definitely a certain something that the musical director has to have. That it's charisma, I think, actually, ultimately. That's a very special, difficult thing to get sometimes.
Yeah, it is, and especially if you're feeling a little bit tired, that can be a bit difficult. But it's something we've hopefully seen really improve over the last kind of 50 years. If you think back to kind of your traditional kind of choir master in a church choir or a school choir, could be quite scary and create people are very scared to sing the wrong note or sing too loud or out of tune or whatever it was. And I really don't think that is fostering well, technically we're not going to be relaxed and singing at our best, but also if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to want to go to choir, and we're not professionals, in amateur choirs. So the first thing is that we want to be there and we're having a really good time. Otherwise, well, I'll go and do something else.
Well, I do think that, the likes of Gareth Malone and other TV programs, what they did, they took a fussiness, a stuffiness out of it. And I think that has the legacy of that is in what you're doing, is in the choirs. I'm in so many choirs in the area, and it's good for people's mental health. It's good for community. It's good for the arts as well.
Yes, absolutely. And at a time where the arts, in some ways, are finding things very difficult, and I particularly think with kind of instrumental music, actually, that people are really having to take a step back and think about the next kind of 50 years, mainly because I think kind of at that early level in school, we've had so many instrumental or singing programs kind of scrapped in that kind of in primary schools and things like that, and it's if you don't have that, it's very difficult to kind of to project into kind of a few years into the future and see it's going to be quite different. I think going on to that, though, a really positive thing is singing, is that you don't need anything to sing. You have your voice, and you can sing at home, you can sing anywhere, as long as people don't you're not disturbing everyone, and people will stop singing. You've been singing for hours, but yeah, anyone can do it, and I really believe that anyone can sing. And if you're enjoying it and you're having a go and you're like trying to kind of make a sound that you enjoy listening to, you're singing and having a great time.
And I often find that no matter how long you've been singing, there's always something that you're learning about your own voice, about phrasing, about breathing, and even just the reading the music as well. I've always longed to be one of those people that could see the note on page and be able to sing it. It's a perfect pitch, they call that. It's a
perfect pitch, yes. Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I don't have perfect pitch. I would need to be given the first note, and I could kind of work the rest out from there. But I know a few people, professionals and not, who have perfect pitch, and it can be very useful, but it can be very difficult, because if you're singing a cappella with no accompaniment, and the choir, something that can happen is the choir get a little bit lower in pitch, just a tiny bit, they just kind of slip down, and then if you have perfect pitch, it's very difficult sometimes to kind of hear that, and you want to push it back up to where it should be, and that can be very troubling, and some people really struggle with that. So yeah, it can be good, can be bad.
I've never thought about it like that. Well, look, let's talk about where you meet and about the choir specifically, and we could talk much more. I could talk to you about your background a lot more, because I've looked at it. You've been in a lot of choirs, and you've done a lot of directing from what I've seen here. Can I just ask on that, if you were asked about doing a real classical choral piece, or it was a sort of modern pop type piece that had been redone to be, it could be done in a choir, I guess I'm sort of saying, do you have a preference, or would you have a preference for the more traditional choral piece, or you like the challenge of taking something that everybody knows, but you have to take it into a choral setting?
Well, I would say absolutely do both. I mean, it's very dependent on the pieces, and everyone has their preferences of kind of types of music they like. But I think, why not put both together in a concert? I think if we restrict ourselves to one style, I mean, we're only doing half the exciting things that we could be doing. So let's do both and put them together and see what it's like. And you learn. We're talking about skills. You learn so many different skills through trying your hand at lots of different styles and periods.
I'm going to ask you a very unfair question, because I haven't prepped you for this, but your top 3 pieces as a musical director to lead, what would they be? Your desert island discs of musical directorship.
Well, to be honest, one of them we're doing with Voci, and coming up is Kim Andre Arneson. He wrote, I've got it. Yeah, Even When He Is Silent. He wrote it originally for SATB, so full choir, but then there's another version just for upper voices, and it's a sacred text, a religious text about and I'm not personally religious, but I do conduct a lot of church music and things like that, and I think the texts can be very interesting how they set it, and it's just the harmony in that is so beautiful, and it's very refined, and I think it's very beautifully put together. So that would definitely be up there for me. I'm trying to think what else. I recently in a workshop conducted kind of some excerpts from Handel's Messiah. And this is one. It's just more of a childhood thing for me. I kind of growing up, it seemed to be the piece that we listened to at Christmas, and people listen to it at Easter as well. But we always listen to it before Christmas.
Yeah.
And really, and I had it I think it was in the car at one point, and it's just something I feel feels very at home for me. So I really, really enjoyed conducting that with the orchestra and the full chorus.
It's like a roller coaster of a piece, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
I don't know if you ever really learn it, or you just have to do it over and over and over, and you get more confidence singing it.
Yeah, so I think so. I'm sure there are tenors that have done 50 Messiahs by now, and now I would imagine they're pretty happy with it. But you're right, it's quite a work, and especially if you do the whole thing. I mean, lots of people cut out lots of movements, but if you do the whole thing, it's a huge amount to learn, and to keep the intensity up for so long. It's very tough.
I don't know if it's that particular piece, but there's a piece I remember singing as a young person, and it goes really fast, and then it stops suddenly.
That sounds like it could be Handel, as it suddenly goes very slow.
And you do not want to be that person who doesn't stop. I remember the very first time I sung it, I mimed the bar leading up to that part, because I thought, I cannot be that person. Anyway, and then your last top three pick, what else would you have?
I think my last one, it's a simple one, and it's an old favourite for, I think, lots of choral singers. Thomas Tallis, If Ye Love Me. Is a very short, sweet piece.
Is that, if you love you, keep thy commandments?
The exact same, the very same. Yeah, that's it. It's simple, beautiful, perfect. I think it's absolutely lovely. I could listen to it all day.
You've taken me back a number of years. I remember singing that. So we were talking about the choir. You've got a couple of concerts coming up.
Yep.
Just as a reminder, I've got them in front of me. So you've got a summer concert with the Wessex Choir, and that's in St George's Church right here in Altrincham on Saturday, the 9th of May. Tell us about the Wessex Choir.
Yeah, so we met them. I say we, the choir met them before I met Voci at a competition. So they were competing against each other, but from that came kind of a friendship between the two, and they've decided they would collaborate. So they're coming to very kindly sing in our concert this summer, and then we're going to be joining them a year later for their summer concert next year.
Wonderful.
So they're award-winning choir, lower voices choir, so male voices. So it should be really interesting to have the two sides of it. So we'll do our upper voices stuff, they'll do their stuff separately, and then at the end we're going to come together for collaboration, which would be great for both choirs, because how often do they sing with a full SATB choir?
Beautiful. And that's been entitled Hope for Peace, is that right?
Hope for Peace is our theme for the concert, yes, which I thought a lot about what to do for a theme and how to tie things together, and I thought right now that felt like a poignant one and a good one to choose.
I think that absolutely does. And then you've got another one on the 11th of June, I believe, at Sale Waterside, is that right?
Yeah, part of Sale Festival. I think we'll be in the theatre in the evening on the 11th of June, doing a few from our concert and a few new ones as well. So if you go to the first concert on the 9th of May, don't worry, on the 11th you'll get a few new ones, something a bit different as well to look out for.
And Ben, if people want to find out more information about the choir, both the concerts or actually more about joining the choir, where's the best place to look you up?
Yeah, I think probably the website's really up to date, Voci or Voci Choir. I'll double check that. But yeah, everything's on there. It has like email addresses of all of us and how to get in touch. And we're really, really keen for new members who are interested. So even if you kind of feel, your music reading, you're like not feeling 100% on that, that's absolutely fine. We really want to hear from you. And we just ask for people to kind of come along to a few rehearsals, see what they think. And we kind of take it from there. So yeah, if if that sounds like something that you'd be keen to join, upper voices, singing lots of new music and old music, we'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Ben Nicol, musical director at the Voci Choir. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
This is the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.